Bank, Simply Smarter Banking, and Gittens Pharmacare, the pharmacy that cares.
So you've got the new ACB Smart Card. But what really makes this debit card so smart? For starters, around the corner or around the world, you can withdraw cash from any ATM displaying a Visa logo. You can also use it to shop online securely or pay the cashier at any vendor's point of sale machine. Safer than cash. And since the card is contactless, just tap and go for quick payment. Plus, activate the ACB Smart app on your device and get transaction alerts to monitor your smart card activity. Bank smarter with the ACB Smart Card.
ACB Caribbean. Simply smarter banking.
Gittens Pharmacare, the pharmacy that cares. Halifax Street, St. George's. Affordable access to care, a wide range of prescription drugs, medical supplies, health and beauty items, diabetic testing supplies, immune system support products, vitamins, supplements, and lots more. Visit us today or call 440-2165. Ask about or call in prescriptions, discounted items, and special delivery requests. Gittens Pharmacare. Care, convenience, expertise. We've got it all.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of Interesting Grenadians. Today I have a school buddy of mine, DC Campbell, Dunbar DC Campbell. And we're going to chat with him. He's a very interesting Grenadian, and we're going to chat with him about some of the things he has done over the years. And DC, I see you visiting us in Grenada at this time. What brings you to Grenada?
Let me first of all say thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and I'm glad we can reconnect after all these years after GBSS. I'm here right now with a BBC crew. Laura Trevelyan is the leader of the team. And they're researching Grenada's history, Grenada's slave history, particularly the wealth that was transferred from Grenada's plantation, from the slaves, their blood, their sweat, their lives, to enrich other countries. And her interest is to understand how slavery operated, the brutality of it, the inhumanity of it, and to look for current ways that we could reimburse or repatriate or the reparation program that can enhance the local communities in Grenada and other islands. But we're here in Grenada specific for that purpose.
It's very interesting and very timely. As you know, CARICOM has a committee addressing reparations, and in Grenada we have a committee addressing reparations. Actually, I volunteer on that committee. Ali Gill is the head of that committee. So very timely, very important, and it's something that really needs the attention that it needs to get. You know, so it's great that you're working on that. Keep us posted on how things go.
I certainly will. Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So you have done so much. I mean, you're a former U.S. Marine. I know you studied economics. You're a writer. We have a couple of your books here. You're a marathon runner, I understand, or used to be, right? A certified diver, which I would expect being a Marine, and numerous other things. When you left Grenada, where did you go from here?
I moved to St. Croix. I had just gotten the green card from my dad, who was working there. I worked there in the oil refinery as an oil refinery operator for a year. Within a year, I got my first injury. Well, my first and only injury in the oil refinery. Got splashed in the eyes with benzene, and it was a difficult recovery. But once I was through with it, at age 19, I said oil refinery work was just too dangerous for me, so I decided to join the U.S. Marine Corps.
I wonder which one is more dangerous.
I figured if it's going to be danger, I want to be doing something that I really wanted to do. And my attraction to the military started at GBSS when I was in the Cadet Corps. Loved the idea of the uniform, handling a rifle and drilling and those things.
Who was your drill master back then? The Ambrose?
Ambrose Philip,
right? Yeah, I remember those.
Some of the good guys were.
I was in the cadets too, but
yeah. So I went over to San Juan and signed on the papers, and my first flight into the United States was to South Carolina, and I took the midnight bus into boot camp. Paris Island, South Carolina, and that was a life-changing moment. Yes.
And the rest is history, I guess.
The rest is history.
What was one of your most interesting times in the military?
Gosh, well, I was in Japan for a year, and that also left a lasting impression on me. The Japanese people were very humble, hospitable, love the food, learn the language, travel all around, and really I look forward to another time when I can go back to visit. So my Japan experience was probably the best.
And back in Grenada, the Campbells, you grew up in Guelph.
Yes.
Tell us about a little bit about your formative years in Guelph.
Yeah, well, you know, I was born in Aruba. My parents, my dad is from Guelph, yes, the Campbells, and my mom is from Grenville. So I had the country beginning. So going to Guelph at age 4 from Aruba was an adventure for me. We didn't have electricity. The street lights were lamps, and back then we called them the lamp posts, which was appropriate because they were the metal lamps. Old Mr. Ferguson was the guy who used to light the streets at night with those lamps. Learned to read and write on the candlelight and kerosene lamps. That was what we did in the 60s in Guelph before we had electricity. Learn to live the simple life. Make kites, make slingshots. Back then we called them catapults. Everything you made, every adventure was what you created. Didn't have iPhone, didn't have iPods, and those things.
Right.
And so the simplicity of it is what I thought brought the richness of the experience. Simplicity, I think, is the way to go. And I've learned that from a lot of the older people in Guelph, and I've never forgotten it. My Guelph experience is one of my most treasured years.
So tell us a little bit, there's a connection between the Campbells and Belvedere Estate. I know a lot of your books, you talk about Belvedere and Fedor and all that. You have 2 books basically on Fedor and 1 book on the Bianca Sea. And we write here at the Sales restaurant on the Carenage, and we look out there, and that's where the Bianca Sea went down. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But tell me about that connection with Belvedere.
Yeah, well, over the years, the Campbells have managed Belvedere and Shadow Estates. And so as a kid growing up in Guelph, I spent a lot of barefoot times up in the mud, in the bush, and then running around on the nutmeg trees and flying the cocoa leaf kites and those kinds of things. So I had a very personal connection to the estates and to the land up there. And then as I started to understand the history of that location, the Julian Fedor Rebellion, what made Guelph so different from other places in terms of the experience during the rebellion, it really intrigued me. And so Belvedere is always a central theme for my interest.
Have you ever seen Fedor's ghost up there?
No, you know, as a matter of fact, as a kid, that's what we knew about Julian Fedor, that he was a mystical figure, some heroic figure, riding on his horse at night, and he was more of a superstition than reality. And the more I realized this is a real human being, this is a real history, the more I wanted to learn, and the more research I did, the more I became captivated by the story. And so after a while I said, it has to be in a book. It has to be told. Yes, we know we had Julian Fedor Rebellion in 1795 and 1796, but I wanted it to be a story that would enhance people's interest and really carry them through the key events that led to that rebellion.
And you did one of your books again was on the Bianca Sea. Tell us a little bit briefly about that and why you chose to do it on the Bianca Sea.
I feel that Grenada, and I know that Grenada has a wealth of stories, a lot of good stories yet to be told, and I looked for the ones that were more obvious, the Bianca Sea. And most of the times we talk about Bianca Sea, we say, yes, the ship was burning, 670 people were at risk, the Grenadian people got onto anything that floated, yachts, fishing boats, rowboats, and saved 670 people, brought them to the island, put them up in churches and homes and schools, and took care of 670 Italian-speaking passengers. That's it. But I thought, there's more we can tell. We have to bring authentic Grenadian personalities, stories to enhance it and really bring it alive. And that's why I wrote that book. But the other thing I had to do was, if the ship is under 100 feet of water, I had to go there.
So you died?
Well, I didn't. I didn't go there personally. But I decided if I had to write about scuba diving, I had to become a scuba diver myself. So I went through the training, became certified. So when I speak about the physics of diving, about hydrogen and tanks and those things, I knew exactly what I was talking about. So that's one of the stories that I really enjoyed writing.
Nice.
Yeah.
You always use the novel format. Why is that?
Well, you know, there are many good books written on the history, on the facts. And I thought, okay, we have addressed the audiences who like to read history. but there are also more other people that like to read a story using that same history. So I've benefited from some of the great historians we have here on the island: George Brazan, Angus Martin, Curtis Jacobs. All of these names, Dr. Nicole Phillip, all of those names have contributed to my understanding of the historical facts. What I did was to take those historic moments, put them in a story, so people who enjoy reading a good story with authentic Grenadian characters through the eyes of a Grenadian. So many times we read Caribbean stories through the eyes of foreigners. Through the eyes of a Grenadian, I believe it brought more color, more character, and more meaning than say someone abroad was writing.
Of course, absolutely. What about your family? Kids and
yeah, I'm married to a Grenadian. I've been married now for I think 47 years. I hope my wife is not going to double check the numbers. But
fact check it. Hope she doesn't fact check it.
Yeah, we were married. As a matter of fact, you mentioned the Marine Corps. I got married here on the island in my U.S. Marine Corps uniform up here at the Anglican Church in July 2nd, 1977. And so we have 2 daughters, and one of our daughters have given us 2 amazing grandsons. And I thought they needed to know about Grenada also, so I just bought some children's book written by one of our local writers, just so that while they're in Texas, they can learn about Grenada as well.
So back in the days of GBSS, any teachers come to your mind as being outstanding who maybe inspired you? Or?
Well, let's first start with the students that inspired me, and you're one of them. And you've been my friend for many years, and we're connected, and I appreciate that. George Brazan and Jackie Kreff were two teachers that I had at GBSS. George Brazan, I think, left me the lasting impression. His interest in economics. I know he had a master's degree in Latin American economics. And so I wanted to follow in his footsteps for some reason. And I kept his book, and that book now I've had now for over 45, 50 years.
Is that this guy here?
Economics Made Simple. And that's the book that George Brazan started teaching me economics back in GBSS. And I've carried that book with me all the years since I left Grenada. And so after I finished with the military, I had the GI Bill, which supports some educational efforts, and they paid for some of it. And that's when I went on to, I got my undergraduate in political science and economics and my master's in economics. And I credit George Brazan with spotting, putting the spotlight on that path that I never gave up on. And that's why I think it's so important for youth to look for people who could inspire them. And once they get that inspiration, hold on to it. Never let go.
Absolutely. Yes. I am a firm believer in that. I really believe. I mean, you remember him too, Dr. Groom.
Oh, but of course.
I mean, that's the kind of teachers you need. These people. I mean, I could hold a serpent and snake when I was a kid because of Dr. Groom. And so I always believe in that too. If you have a really good teacher, you need to hold on to that teacher. Or a good coach. These are the people who really inspire you to be whatever you want to become.
And my point too is that we have them right here in Grenada.
We
have them right here. And I mentioned just briefly about the gentleman who used to light the lamps in Gulf. I mean, this was an older man, and that's what he did.
Mr. Ferguson?
Mr. Ferguson. And he inspired me because he got up, whether it rained, storm or not, he was out there every night, lighting the streets of Gulf for people to walk safely at night. And so these were simple people doing profound things, and we have them all over this island.
What was Mr. Ferguson's first name?
Lionel Ferguson. Lionel Ferguson, yes.
And he was later awarded by the government for his role back in that time, right?
Right. So he got the Order of the British Empire, I think it was, and he was, when he turned 100 years old, the governor showed up for his birthday, chief of police, all of the high officials in the country. And when he passed away at age 104, before he passed away, he told my good friend Arthur Hosen that the last 5 years of his life were the absolute best. And I've told myself, I can't wait till I'm 99 so I can really start living. That was the message, that at any age, you can live a rich life.
What is the next step for you after the BBC documentary? What's your next book?
Well, I'm currently writing on a book right now, but it's on an American person who asked me to write their biography. This was a drug dealer, grew up in the ghettos, lived a harsh life, many dangerous situations, almost got killed, decided to turn his life around. Today he's a successful businessman. He wanted to tell his story so young people could learn that there are other avenues. And of course he used education to get out of the ghettos, and today he's very successful. So I'm writing his story right now.
Nice. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure reconnecting, and this is a real nice chat, and I hope our viewers and audience would enjoy it as well.
Yeah, the pleasure was mine.
Appreciate it.
Always good to see you, Eugene. Thank you. Yes. So this is the novel Bianca Sea Still Burns, and it's based on the fire and sinking of the Bianca Sea outside the St. George's Harbor, which occurred on the 22nd of October, 1961. In this novel, we have the captain of the ship and the owner of the ship discussing how to save the passengers on that ship after the explosion and fires. So we begin with the explosion. The explosion shattered the early morning calm. It shuddered through the luxury cruise ship and echoed off the St. George's hillsides. Mario Costa threw aside his silk sheets and rolled off the bed in his cabin. Had the disturbance come from the harbor or from his ship? He rushed onto the balcony with a pair of binoculars. His 6-story luxury suite gave him a commanding view of the horseshoe-shaped harbor. The tranquil blue sea basked in mild sunlight, and rowboats bobbed without a care along the waterfront. No signs of any smoldering destruction he could have expected to see from such a powerful blast. Not even on the green hillsides, crisscrossed with sagging telephone lines and peppered with red roof houses. The only smoke came from a car rumbling past on the waterfront road. It spewed a lazy trail of gray exhaust in its wake. Had his mind tricked him out of bed to end another distressing dream? The blast had not been a product of his trained imagination. It had also alerted others. Several residents pointed from homes nestled in the sloping greenery. He focused his binoculars on a few people in dark suits and hats, probably on their way to church, who paused on the shoreline. They gazed at the ship with stunned expressions. Mario peered at the cabins below to see what drew the islanders' attention. Nothing except a fleeting whiff of burning plastic. Just then, thick hot smoke engulfed his balcony, choking and blinding him. Alarm bell chorused within the ship. With his arms flailing to find his way, he stumbled back into the cabin and slid the glass door shut. What the hell? Papa! His 3-year-old daughter cried out from her bed, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. It's okay, Bambina, I'm here. He hurried to the nightstand between their beds and grabbed the red phone. He dialed the number to the bridge, hoping for assurance from Captain Francisco Cravaco, the stocky, fatherly captain with 40 years of flawless service to the Costa Cruise Lines. It rang several times with no answer. He hung up and tried again. Finally, the captain's second-in-command answered the phone. Despite the emergency, and even in Italian, the staff captain sounded cold. How may I help you, Monsieur Costa? Where is mio capitano? Mario hollered over the sound of alarm bells. Running footsteps pounded the hallways below. Screams. The cabin darkened, and the smell of burning rubber tinged Mario's nostrils. His daughter stood up on the bed in a flowered nightgown and pointed at the balcony door. Papa! Thick smoke churned into the balcony, blocking the green hills in morning sunlight. Sheets of black seeped under the door and curled up the pink walls to the mirrored ceilings. The Mayday horns blew 3 times again. Let's go, he shouted. But my doll, here, take this one. He grabbed her favorite doll and bolted out the front door with his daughter wrapped in his arms. A stampede drummed the hallways below. Shrieks rang out loudly as the alarm bells. Through the fear chilling his bones and fogging his thoughts, he remembered the escape ladder from the private deck. He lifted the heavy latch and pushed the metal door. Fresh air blew in and the island opened up before him. But something had changed in the harbor. It took him a minute to recognize the reason for the white water turbulence leaving the island. A ragtag flotilla of rowboats, sailboats, and motorboats raced towards his cruise ship. He lifted his daughter onto his back. Hold Papa around his neck, tight. Another explosion rumbled in the ship's bowels. The door rattled. Mario climbed down the ladder to the water level as quickly as his loose bedroom slippers could take him. Screaming passengers choked other ladders around him, most with red life jackets pulled over bedraggled night clothes. Some jumped into the water. Boats rode into the pandemonium. The rescuers took women and children first, 4 or 5 at a time, then turned back to shore. A dark-skinned girl in her late teens maneuvered her rowboat up to Mario's ladder. She stood barefoot in see-through nightie and stretched out her arms. "Give me your baby, quick!" He kissed his daughter and passed her into the girl's embrace. His daughter cried out, "Papa, you will be okay now," the girl said. "I go back to ship," Mario yelled over the commotion in Italian. His thoughts struggling between the Italian and his little English he understood. You crazy?" The girl looked at a diamond-studded gold ring on his left hand. "You go back for your wife?" He tugged at his ring and handed it to her. "Use this. Get anything you need. Hear her for me. How I find you? Just ask for Cammy. Everybody knows me. Cammy, see?" "Yes. What's your baby's name?" "Bianca, like the name of the ship." He turned and climbed the ladder into the smoking hull. Bianca screamed from the arms of a stranger, tugged at his heart while smoke burned his lungs. So this is the introduction to the Bianca Sea Still Burns.
Thanks again, viewers and listeners, for tuning into this edition of Interesting Grenadians. I hope you join us again next week at 8 o'clock on GBN, same time, same place, for another Interesting Grenadian.